Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the simple and AI-powered rewards and recognition platform for employee engagement.
In the not-so-distant past, the corporate world placed a premium on formal degrees, often serving as a gatekeepers to coveted job opportunities. But in recent years, a seismic shift has taken place, challenging the age-old belief that a college diploma is the ultimate key to professional success. We find ourselves in the midst of skills over degree revolution, a paradigm shift that is redefining the rules of engagement in the job market. Companies are increasingly prioritizing skills, competencies, and real-world experiences over traditional academic credentials. It's a shift driven by technology, globalization, and the ever-increasing demand for innovation and adaptability in the workforce. Hello listeners, welcome to another episode of Vantage Influencers Podcast, where we explore a wide range of HR topics that are sure to grab your attention and inspire you. I'm your host, Sanjeevani Saikia. In this episode, we will be discussing the transformative shift of skills over degree, delving into the reasons behind it, its impact on both job seekers and employers, and the opportunities it presents for a more skill-driven corporate landscape. And for the same, I have with me Michelle Westfort, Chief University Officer, InStride Strategic Enterprise Education. Hi, Michelle.
Good morning.
Good morning, Michelle. First and foremost, I want to express my gratitude for your presence today and for taking the time to be part of this episode. Before we delve into today's topic, skills over degree, the corporate paradigm shift, could you kindly walk us through your corporate journey so far?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's really exciting to be a part of these podcasts. I am the Chief University Officer for InStride, which is a tech-enabled services company that delivers workforce education solutions. And as a part of our work, we drive meaningful social business outcomes and unlocking access to life-changing education. And my career journey really started in 20 plus years ago in education, thinking about how to bring career education to bear for diverse learners and those that really wanted to focus on creative skills. It since drove me to globalization, partnerships, and new models for institutions as they went through digitization and online program management, and truly thinking about technology and how that enables skills advancement for learners, both from the employment side as well as the education side. So I've had a really rich career in being able to do that in startups, in large public companies, and also working with some of the most incredible academic institutions in the world.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. It has truly been remarkable. So with your permission, Michelle, can we now delve into the topic?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So Michelle, I think you'll agree that in today's rapidly evolving job market, the emergence of diverse skill sets and the changing nature of work have sparkled discussions about the relevance of traditional educational credentials versus practical abilities. I think skills over degrees have become increasingly pertinent in shaping modern hiring practices. So, given this shift in priorities towards skills in hiring, what key factors do you believe are primarily influencing this change in corporate recruitment strategies, moving away from traditional emphasis on degrees?
It's been a really fascinating shift that's really been driven by a confluence of factors. And if I think about it, first and foremost, the rapid pace of technological advancement has meant that the shelf life of skills is shorter than ever. And companies are looking for individuals that can demonstrate really this proactive approach to learning and the adaptability to new skills, but also ways of thinking and using new tools. So corporations we're seeing are having a harder time keeping up with that. And their response has been favoring those skills over degrees, as you mentioned. But really, that's not the entire picture. So if we think about the strategy that we're seeing, there's equally growing recognition that the value of a diversity of thought and also experiences in the workplace are meaningful. And so employers are realizing that in the past, the degree was the indicator of a person's potential or capability, and that's just not so anymore.
True.
So they're instead valuing skills that come from things like hands-on experience, or sometimes they're gained out of traditional education paths. And yet still within the corporation, the requirements that they impose from a job requirement perspective actually prevent what they're trying to do from a strategy perspective in valuing the diversity and looking at the experience. So some of the things that we know are 30% of US workers without a college diploma actually have the skills necessary to earn 70% more. These are things that we're trying to work towards with corporations, also recognizing that in the market, if you're trying to attract a broader, diverse set of employees, 71 million workers have the skills, but they actually don't have a degree. Yeah. And then lastly, think about it, 75% of the new job postings actually require a degree. So there's a mismatch there. And it's nice to be on the solution side of the problem where we're actually bridging the gap between, what should be academically taught and also what's practical, on the job skills. And lastly, if you think about it from a credential and degree perspective, it's really about co-curating and co-creating with industry partners. So that you can combine what's taught in the classroom and then also what's needed on the ground. So that's really where we're seeing that shift the most.
Okay. So do you think it varies from country to country again? Because say, for example, here in India, the employers will definitely want at least a bachelor's degree. It may be not so in the United States of America. So do you think it varies from country to country?
It probably does vary from country to country, depending on the competitive landscape that exists in the hiring market.
Yeah.
So I think it truly does vary. In the U.S., we're finding that there still is a gap between what employers are looking for and the skills that employees have. And we also recognize that the number of individuals that actually have a degree is fewer and fewer. So we need to solve for that problem.
Okay. Michelle, I'm sure you must have observed that job seekers face a particular challenge, and that is not being able to effectively communicate the skills that they possess most of the time. And since employers increasingly prioritize skill sets, understanding how to showcase these competencies become pivotal for job seekers. So here I would like to ask you, how can job seekers effectively showcase their skills in resumes or interviews to catch the attention of employers in the evolving hiring landscape? So what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think job seekers need to really pivot from traditional resume formats and move to highlighting practical skills and also measurable achievements. So I'll give an example. Instead of just listing a degree or past job title or where somebody worked, job seekers should focus on the skills that they have and mastered, and then some of the concrete outcomes of the work that they've done. So for instance, if you think about a candidate that wants to do this well, they might specify something like expertise in driving cross-functional projects that result in 20% increase in operational efficiencies, right? So here you have a few different ways in which an employer can identify what's important to them, whether it's cross-functional work or whether it's results orientation with a measurable number like 20% increase, and then focused on operational efficiencies, which tells you the type of experience that that individual has, rather than just stating that they have a degree in business administration, because clearly you would learn those things in school for business administration. However, listing it on a resume would indicate that. Now, similarly, as you asked about interview process, you might have that same type of response in an interview process, but I think it's best to bring those competencies to life in some form of narrative, like a story.
Yeah.
And so, hiring managers have typically looked for what they call the STAR method. I think it's particularly effective because you describe a situation, which is more like a problem. You talk about the tasks, the actions, and then what was the outcome or result. And that really shows that the individual has an expertise, but also can demonstrate some strategic thinking and also leadership qualities. So I think that those are the important soft skills that help a job seeker stand out in the process. And then lastly, I would say that to stand out, employers are looking for individuals that are committed to lifelong learning and development. So when we think about skills, or when we think about degrees, as you mentioned in your first question, I think what needs to be demonstrated in resumes and also in interviews is that the individual is committing to continued education, continued professional development courses. There are so many ways to achieve that today with short form courses and credentials, staying on top of the market trends and any of the industry shifts. But these are the things that corporations are looking for, because the market is advancing and changing so quickly. The thing that remains constant is you're hiring somebody that's committed to learning and development, somebody that's committed to improving themselves, and somebody who can balance education and work at the same time. Those are really attractive things for employers to be looking for from job seekers.
Yeah. Here, I think you've highlighted a very important point, that is continuous learning. So it's a known fact that continuous learning and skill maintenance are key to staying competitive and adaptable in your career, whether through formal education, online courses, workshops, or other methods. Investing in building a skill set is imperative. So here it would be great, Michelle, if you could tell us how individuals without formal degrees keep their skills competitive and up to date.
So there's a few ways that I like to think about this. And one is, as an individual, recognizing that you have to stay adaptable and open to learning is really critical. That's a mindset. And knowing that you are continuously working to improve, that can be done on the job with your colleagues, with your superiors. It can be recognizing that there are other functions within your business that you want to learn from. Being tapped for projects outside of your comfort zone is also a way to really stay competitive and also stay up to date. Don't stay in one spot, learn from so many others. I like to say that it's kind of like a collection of not only mentors that you can learn from, but skills that you can learn. Having a portfolio career is something that folks have talked about, but really portfolio of skills to me is really critical. And then aligning those to what your employer is looking for. And so some of the work that InStride is doing, where clients can offer direct tuition assistance to employees so that they can take courses and earn degrees. That's great, showing the employer that you are taking those opportunities, you're balancing work and school, and you're able to continue to adapt and grow. Those are ways in which individuals can continue to stay competitive. And then lastly, making folks aware of the skills that you have learned has been one of my favorite parts of working at InStride, because not only does it create awareness of what's available, but we create moments of celebration for the employer to recognize which one of their employees has taken advantage of these wonderful opportunities. So that's been an incredibly fun project to work on.
Wonderful. Yeah. So, Michelle, I think as the hiring landscape continues to transform, job seekers and employers alike face new dynamics and challenges as well. So, can you help us identify potential challenges or downsides that job seekers and employers must be aware of as they navigate this new paradigm shift in hiring?
It's definitely important to look at it from both sides. So for job seekers, one of the biggest challenges is proving their skills. Without a degree to back them up on the resume, they need to find really effective ways to showcase what they can actually do. So I think that is one of the challenges from the job seeker side. From the employer side, the challenge really is around evaluating those skills. So historically, the traditional degree was the benchmark, and it was a signal to say this person can do X. But today, that is not the case. And so it's really challenging for an employer. So they have to get creative with hiring processes. And then the challenge is that they always run the risk of missing out on a candidate who had great potential, but just because they didn't have specific qualifications, they missed the mark. And so I think the balance between these things is really where the challenge is. And then, of course, there's a broader challenge in terms of equity and access. Not everyone has the same access to opportunities for skills development. And so employers and society as a whole really are thinking about how to create this new kind of access that's built on what skills are needed for the corporation. And as you mentioned before, it's not a US specific problem, it's a global issue, so that global organizations can create parity in India or China or Latin America or Europe as equal to what's available in the US. And so I think we're seeing more demand for recognizing that a global program for skills development and consistent hiring practices actually makes sense for an organization, and also for job seekers, and also for those that work in an organization and are continuing to grow.
Okay. So is there any one particular strategy that may work well to mitigate the challenges you've just mentioned? Or do you have a set of strategies in mind that may work well according to you?
So I think that it's really, there is no single answer to it. I think part of the paradigm shift is that there is a double-edged sword there. The more paths there are to entering a job market also means that there's potentially more competition. So if you think about what's happening, they're now competing on a global scale with people who have, a lot of different experiences and skill sets. So if I think about what strategies, have been effective, and also what strategies we're seeing now from corporations, it's really about developing programs that have parity and having programs that are managed broadly and centrally. So that has been one thing that has really impacted the results, by pulling the learning and development work from very localized units into a part of what organizations are looking for from a C-level strategic move. That has really helped have, equity, parity, broad programs, and the ability to, manage these programs without having them look very different from location to location. So I would say that that's probably the biggest game-changing strategy.
True. So, Michelle, we are arriving at the end of today's episode. But before we let you go, there's one last thing that both our listeners and I would love to know your take on. And that is, what does the skills over degrees trend mean for traditional educational institutions? And how might they need to adapt to better prepare students for this changing job market? I feel the education institutions have the potential to be the key change maker in this regard. So what's your take on that?
Totally. Great question. We're seeing a big shift where job skills are more important than just having a degree. But it's not in this or that. The way that colleges and universities are thinking about it is they are not throwing away the old playbook. Instead, what they're doing is they're adding exciting new things to it. And so we're thinking about ways in which mixing in real world projects, getting industry experts involved in the classroom. And what that means is it's really giving education a practical flavor. That's where things are going. And so actually, it's not just about learning how to do stuff. The theory behind the why and the how is super important too. So it's all about finding that sweet spot between knowing things and doing things. That's where the market is going. So working closely with businesses and industry is a game changer for universities. It's like having an inside information on what skills are needed in the job market in the future so that education can adapt to that quickly. So to wrap things up, I would say the whole skills over degrees trend isn't really the challenge. It's the opportunity. It's the opportunity for schools to keep evolving. And that's what I'm seeing universities actually want to do.
Really well said. We've reached at the end of today's podcast. Do you have any message for our listeners? Our listeners would be delighted to hear it from you. Also, our audience might want to stay in touch with you post this podcast. So it would be great if you could tell them how they can reach out to you.
Wonderful. I can be reached on LinkedIn. It's Michelle Westfort. I can also be reached via email, which is michelle.westfort@instride.com. And there's one last thing that I would love for the listeners to, really remember. And it's really about that last piece is making sure that we're recognizing that we're not just learning to do things. Knowing things and doing things are really the important spot to be in. So whether you are a job seeker or you are an employer, finding that mix and working through partnerships is the best way to do it.
Yeah. Michelle, it's been a pleasure to have you as our guest today. Your insights and expertise have been invaluable, and we are grateful for the time you have taken to share your knowledge with our listeners. So thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.